everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. This is year-end accounting. This is our nice little roundup. We're going to go through a lot of things today, but as always on these webinars, we're going to do our very best to keep it short. I'm going to wait another 30 or 45 seconds to allow some more people to come in. However, as is often the case on these, we have lots of folks who register who will be attending after the fact. So if you have to leave at any point today, it's absolutely no big deal. You will be able to get a recording of this in your email. And of course, we'll be able to answer any of the questions that you have when you contact us at ProfitSolve or at Backyard Bookkeeper. All right, so it is 1 minute after the top of the hour. So I do want to be respectful to everyone as they are joining or if they're joining later on a replay. So my name's Joyce Bradford. I work for ProfitSolve, and we own lots of legal technology companies. Today, we decided that it's really appropriate to talk about what you need to do as legal practitioners, as lawyers, as legal admins in your offices to get ready for 2023. And there are very few things that make more of an impact to the success of a business than money. Right. And, we all want to serve clients. We all want to do our best. But being prepared financially matters a whole lot. And so rather than just use our staff to talk about these things today, we've decided to call on our friends at Backyard Bookkeeper. And I have Julie DeLong with us today. Julie, can I get you to say just a quick hello to our group, who I'm sure are going to be fans of yours by the end of this presentation?
Well, thank you for inviting us. It's really great to be here. I'm Julie DeLong. I'm one of the co-founders of Backyard Bookkeeper. Next year, we're going to celebrate our 15th year in business. We serve clients, small business clients in all industries across the entire country. So we've had a really good partnership going with ProfitSolve and some of their software partners for like 6 or 7 years. So we've got a lot of law firm clients, and we have a lot of accumulated expertise on our team in this particular industry. It's an interesting one with interesting accounting challenges. So I'm happy to be here.
Interesting is definitely the way we like to phrase this, right? So Julie, let's just get into it. So today we're going to talk about, in a pretty short period of time here, we're going to talk about closing 2022. We're going to talk about what the pros, that means your team, what the pros are doing that a standard law firm might not be doing right now. We're going to talk about why getting help matters. And then we're going to talk about reaching out if you need assistance in your firm, right? So here's where we are right now. The year is ending, but your business must go on. There's no stopping, right? Just because the year end doesn't mean you are going to end. I hope you get to take some vacation time with your friends or family, but business is going to resume on January 1st or 2nd. So let's talk about what you need to do to successfully close out this year and to move into 2023 on firm financial footing. All right, so Julie, let's get right into this first piece, which is closing 2022. I sent some of these questions to you when you were kind enough to provide some answers. So let's talk about what businesses, what legal businesses, what law firms need to do to close out the books for 2022. And Julie, I will ask you questions as they come up, but I'd love for you to just brain dump on us on this.
Okay, yeah. Well, the first 3 things here on this page are universal to all businesses, and this would be my answer to any kind of business. First thing is basically the data entry. It's the boring part of bookkeeping, right? You just want to make sure that all of your transactions are represented in your books, right? That all the income's there, all the expenses are there. And in most instances, that means that you've got your bank accounts hooked up to your accounting software and you're just downloading it, right? So you have to make sure that those transactions are actually in the books, right? So you're going to assign all that through the bank feeds. It's not enough to just enter the data. You also need to at least do the basics of reconciliation. Any good accounting software is going to have a reconciliation feature, which means that you're going to compare what's in the books to what's on the bank statement. There's a lot of different ways that transactions can get into your accounting, depending on what software you're using. There's transactions that can be downloaded. There's transactions that might be importing from some other software, like if you're For example, like a Rocket Matter client, some of those might be coming into QuickBooks, so like there's different data sources. And so the reconciliation process will help you make sure that you are not duplicating information, right? You don't want to have the scenario where, suppose your billing software is importing an invoice and recording income in your books, and then you also receive a deposit from the bank, and then you record the income again. That's a very common problem. So you can catch most of those when you're doing the reconciliation. And then you need to review your financials. And I always say, like, the balance sheet is underrated when it comes to small business. People think that it's not that important, and that the P&L is more meaningful. I'm not going to disagree with that, but the balance sheet is where you're going to see whether or not there's a big error, right? So if you look at your balance sheet and your company credit card has a negative balance, for example, you've missed something, right? Or if your bank account balance as reported on the balance sheet is very strange compared to what is actually in there. Or if any other kind of miscellaneous items, if you're using a solution that includes QuickBooks Online has an account called uncategorized asset, for example. I am unable to delete that account. It's a default account. You cannot make it go away. And things end up in there sometimes by accident. So look at your balance sheet, because that's where you're going to identify whether or not something big is missing or something weird is going on, right? Then after you've looked at the balance sheet, and it looks okay.
Let me let's just pause there for 1 second. So we talk about these things a lot. Can we get some basic definitions? Can you tell our audience what a balance sheet is, and then what a P&L is for those who are new to it?
Sure. So a balance sheet is basically a listing of all of your assets and liabilities in the company. So assets would be the money in your bank account, your accounts receivable, anything that has a cash value, right? If you've purchased furniture, or if your firm owns the building that you operate out of, for example, these are all examples of assets that you might see in a law firm. Liabilities would be your credit cards. If you have accounts payable, if you took out an SBA loan to get started, or you have some other kind of loan, those would be your liabilities. So when you're looking at a balance sheet, what I would say is, like, you just want to understand the items that are on there, right? Okay. So that's why I'm saying, like, if you look at your balance sheet and there's an uncategorized asset with $6,000 in it, you need to go and figure out, like, what that was.
What on earth?
Right?
What on earth that is.
At the bottom of the balance sheet, you've got the equity, and that's just honestly, it's the difference between your assets and liabilities. It's a feature of accounting software, and I tell people not to worry about it too much. Don't worry too much. The assets and liabilities for a small business owner, they need to be things that you understand and agree with, more or less.
I love that. Thank you so much, Julie. All right, so let's talk about the IOLTA account, which lawyers know and fear. So let's talk about IOLTA accounting. Since this is what gets so many lawyers in front of their bar associations and law societies, and just gets people in trouble.
Yep. So the big thing is, as all of you, I'm sure, know, the IOLTA account is money that doesn't belong to you, right? But from a bookkeeping standpoint, you are the custodian of that money. And it's a very common way of accounting for it to actually include it in the bookkeeping, because then it makes it easier to reconcile. You can track all of those client transactions and see that it's in there. And a good accounting software for law firms will also enable you to run three-way reconciliations, right? And so that can all become part of the big picture of bookkeeping. But, going back to that balance sheet issue, you have assets and you have liabilities. So the way that we handle this from a bookkeeping perspective, when the IOLTA account is on the books and is part of the monthly reconciliation activities, is we make sure that it's exactly offset by a liability. So basically, from an accounting standpoint, they cancel each other out. There's no income or expense associated with that IOLTA account. And the big red flag that we see sometimes is we'll see a bank account, like an IOLTA bank account balance on that balance sheet, that has a different balance than the liability. So that means that, at least from a bookkeeping standpoint, don't panic if you see this. That doesn't necessarily mean that you messed up, but it does mean that you have a bookkeeping problem at the very least, and it needs to be diagnosed. But it means that there's a transaction. It's one of two things. Either you have a transaction in the bank account that was not associated with the client's trust with a retainer liability, right? So maybe you accidentally deposited a payment on an invoice into the trust account instead of the operating account. Or there is a transaction in the operating account that was accidentally booked against a client's retainer. So it's one of those two problems from a bookkeeping standpoint. And once you diagnose whether or not there's a recording, like a bookkeeping issue, then you can diagnose whether or not you actually need to move money in order to fix a real problem. So
Yeah.
That's your cue. You look at that balance sheet, and there should be an asset with the balance that matches your bank balance, and there needs to be a liability that is to the penny the exact same number as the bank.
You make it sound so easy, Julie. Okay, so there's a lot that has to be done to close out 2022, right? We need to review our balance sheet and our P&L. We need to reconcile our bank account. Part of that, or separately, is reconciling the IOLTA and making sure that our assets and liabilities completely offset each other, reviewing our bank feed, making sure that everything's been cleared from there. So there's a lot. So let's talk about what the accounting pros, because that feels like a lot, right? Let's talk about what the accounting pros are doing that someone in a law firm might not be doing or might not want to do. So let's jump right into this. So what are the pros doing? I will say I did not include Julie's first point on this when she gave me these answers, when she said everything that you don't want to do. That's what the pros are doing.
Yeah, I was going to say every law firm is a little bit different, and in most cases, what happens is that the lawyer or staff in-house are doing all the invoicing and the collections and all of that, right? So those transactions are already in the bookkeeping, but then there's all this other stuff that happens, paying bills, all the stuff on the credit cards, various costs that are being paid on behalf of clients. If you're doing soft costs instead of hard costs, all of that activity needs to be accounted for. So we fill in those gaps. And a lot of things come up, right? There's so many things that can go wrong. Like, so maybe you are doing hard costs in your firm, and you have a Capital One card and you have an American Express card, and you record a hard cost, payment to FedEx or something. And in the books, you record it as being paid on the Amex, but it actually was paid on the Capital One card, right? The bookkeeper can come in and fix that stuff. It's not a big deal. It's sometimes there's unintended consequences when weird things happen. Something I helped resolve earlier this year for a client was a chargeback in the trust account. What was the correct way to record that in such a way that we could match the actual activity that appeared on the bank statement to what was being represented from the client's perspective in the billing software, right? Because we've got to make those two things reconcile to each other and account for everything. Just going through and finding loose ends that haven't been tied up. That is the accounting pro's job.
That is the accounting pro's job. And I'm glad you're here, Julie. There are so many people who don't want to do this or don't have the expertise to do it. The second piece of this is I felt really important and really underrated, because when I'm thinking about bookkeepers and the services that professionals like you provide, I don't often think about the reorganization of the chart of accounts. That's just not something that crossed my mind. Yeah. And you mentioned it, and I said, of course. It makes so much sense. So can you talk about providing your expertise to think about the way a firm is financially organized and then reorganizing it? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, so again, every firm is a little different and does things differently, and it requires a slightly different chart of accounts, right? And it's a good idea to go through and make sure that the chart of accounts that you have actually represents your common expenses. And in many situations, the default that comes with your software is unhelpful. So QuickBooks Online, for example, has a whole bunch of accounts. Like, as soon as it populates with the default chart of accounts, I go through and I delete like 2/3 of them. they'll have things in there like general business expense, which is great, but that's not a category that your CPA is going to like seeing when they're doing your taxes. Like, what are general business expenses? We want something more specific. Or lots of asset and liability accounts for things that the vast majority of firms are never going to need, like land and buildings,
Right. Yeah.
and and various notes payable and whatever, you don't need that stuff. And the more accounts you have, the more likely you are to accidentally put something in the wrong place and not notice, right?
Sure.
Another common thing is breaking things down in a way that makes sense for your business, right? So pretty much any software is going to come with a default advertising category. Well, what does that mean, right? That could lump in website maintenance expenses. It could be your IT costs. It could also be your ad spend if you are someone who's got ads on Facebook or Google, right? And ad spend can be a really significant category. Like, wouldn't you want to break that out and see it as separate from some of your other expenses? I had another example on the tip of my tongue, but there's a lot of things like that can be customized that will be relevant to you. If you're a software heavy business, so sometimes it makes sense to have like a separate expense account for cloud software subscriptions, versus other kinds of subscriptions or dues and subscriptions, which often gets mixed in with like licenses and, anyway. So you've just, depending on your type of law that you're practicing, there's different ways that you can customize that will make more sense to you and make your books simpler.
That's fantastic. I love that. I think that's such a wonderful service you provide. The next one, calibrating, where you make sure that your software solutions are connecting to one another and communicating the right way. This is huge. This is how folks make mistakes because they don't have someone checking this. Give us just a couple sentences on this, and then let's quickly move over to verifying and checking books for consistency.
Yeah, it's just,
yeah,
the world we live in now it's software heavy, right? And as people get more into finding software solutions for their everyday operating problems, you've got to make sure that those things are talking to each other, and things get disconnected all the time. And things are missed, even simple things like bank feeds, right? So you might connect your bank, but maybe the bank upgrades their security requirements or something. And one of the side effects of this is that it stops talking to your accounting software. And then maybe you find the problem later and you fix it. But in the meantime, you've missed a couple days worth of data. Sometimes that happens and you don't even notice. A couple years ago, my Capital One card stopped talking to my software. And I didn't notice until 2 months later that it had just skipped August 17th and 18th or, something like that. And so an accounting professional will help you with those things, will diagnose. And then once the problem's diagnosed, they'll be able to fix it and make whatever adjustments are necessary.
That's so fantastic. I just love this. I think that it's important. So I want to swing back up really quickly. And I just want to cover this again. What we need to do to close out 22, manage your bank feed, right? Go through, complete your reconciliation, manage your profit and loss, review your profit and loss in your balance sheets, as well as any other financial reports that your bookkeeper or accountant wants you to review. And then of course, fully reconcile your IOLTA. And then what the pros are doing, all of that for you, if you'd like for them to, plus cleaning up your books for the things you've missed, reorganizing your chart of accounts, creating a financial structure within your chart of accounts that accurately reflects you as a business so you can meet your financial goals, right? That's what this is all about. Calibrating your software, diagnosing issues, and then of course, checking for consistency and verifying your books. So let's talk about how to get help. So what happens once you actually get help, or why does someone need to get help? So let's talk about truly the benefits of having an accounting professional review your books.
Yeah, so we've talked about a lot of things that can go wrong, right? Yeah. And it is true that if your business is really simple, if you don't have a lot of trust activity, fewer things are likely to go wrong, And if you have a little bit of accounting background and you feel comfortable and you are looking at your balance sheet and your P&L on a regular basis and you're comfortable with them, that's fine. You know, you don't necessarily need to get extra help, but you know, if something weird does happen and you're not quite sure how to fix it, sometimes there's unintended consequences to how those things get dealt with or how you might think you're dealing with it. And so it is a good idea to check in with a professional who can take a look and let you know if you've missed anything. We've touched on lots of things, you know, transactions that get duplicated or that are missing, things that can go wrong in your IOLTA account, all of that. Those are things that an accounting professional can help with. And they can notice if something's weird, right? Like a lot of people don't think about their, like when they get it, when they take out a new loan or something, you know, and they put it on the books, and like we'll see things like that appear in the books occasionally with really strange effects on like equity and balance sheet things, because people don't know the other side of the transaction. They're not thinking about it. So accounting professionals can help you deal with those things, and they can give you that peace of mind that all the loose ends are taken care of. You know?
Yeah. I like to think of accounting professionals as a very weird, but I think appropriate metaphor or analogy. I think of accounting professionals like dermatologists, right? I might see a freckle or a mole every single day, and as a dermatologist, you're going to see it and think something totally different than I am, right? You're going to know if it's weird. You're going to know if it needs to be checked out, right? And it's the same thing, you provide healthcare for financials, right? I think it just is tremendously helpful. So there's a lot that we have to do to properly close out our books and be prepared for 2023. There's a lot that can go wrong potentially, but there's a lot that an accounting professional can solve for you. Now, certainly it's not always necessary to bring in a bookkeeper, but if you would like to, I would like everyone here to feel really free to just reach out to Julie directly. You can always contact us here at the Profit Solve team, but if you'd like to reach out to Backyard Bookkeeper, they are so good to the clients that we work with at all of the Profit Solve family of brands, Rocket Matter, TimeSolve, Tabs 3, Cosmolex. There's no one that I would not recommend them to because they are very, very proficient. But if you would like to reach out, please give them a call, 801-990-3227, or you can just email them, info@backyardbookkeeper.com. Julie, thank you so much for your help. I have appreciated your time and your expertise on this so much today. And let's end this with a quote from Walt Disney, because we all need to just get started on this right now, right?
I do want to add one, just a couple sentences, one really common conversation that I have with new clients. They come to me and they say, oh, like it's a disaster. I don't know what happened. And, and in their minds, it's this big, terrible mess. And I take a look at it and it's like 2 tweaks. I'm able to fix it in 5 to 10 minutes and everything's hunky-dory. Yeah. So a lot of the problems that really can freak out people who are not accounting professionals, they end up often being very easy to solve. So don't get too intimidated by the problem in front of you, and just reach out. We are so happy to help. And it's, we love working with small business owners, and lawyers are one of our specialties. So
wonderful. Thank you, Julie. I appreciate that so much. All right. So let's quit talking and begin doing. So reach out to Julie today if you need help. Reach out to anyone on the Backyard Bookkeeper team. And as always, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here for our webinars. We are just shy of 30 minutes, which is the goal, but reach out to us at profitsolve.com if you have any questions, you want to get in touch with me, or reach out to a salesperson at any one of our family of brands to assist you. So thank you so much. And thank you, Julie. If you have any questions, we'll hang out for just a couple of minutes, but we're going to go ahead and stop sharing and stop the official webinar. So please feel free to ask questions. And now it's going to be off the record. So thank you, everyone.